Three, two, one. What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Hear the Spear, presented to you by NoleGameday.com. We're here live on a wonderful, fantastic Thursday evening, and we're back from our 1 week break. Dustin was up there in Boston. Austin has been at a lot of basketball games, I feel like, and I've just been sitting at the pool enjoying the warm weather down here in the Tampa area. But there has been a few things going on. We've got a lot to catch up on. Nothing too crazy, but we're going to talk about the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about the Eagles and former Seminoles that won and got their Lombardi trophy. We're also going to talk about Florida State's 2024 season awards. Yes, they went 2-10, but there are still awards to be given. Jared Verse also winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. We'll discuss that. We're also going to talk about the NFL Combine. I'm going to be up there covering for the FSU, along with also the Bucks and Commanders, but looking forward to seeing Joshua Farmer, AZ, and Ryan Fitzgerald up there representing Florida State. We're going to talk a couple of former staff members finding new homes, including Adam Fuller and Alex Atkins. Florida State making a new hire on its coaching staff. Also, too, a linebacker, DJ Lundy, is vying for his 6th year of eligibility. We're going to give our thoughts on that. And then we'll do a quick little discussion on spring camp as we're just a little over a month away from that. And then we're going to finish off with some basketball as Florida State is currently in the looks of finding its next head coach to replace Leonard Hamilton after this season. With me this evening is Austin Beasy, our lead basketball writer at NoleGameday.com. And to the far side of Austin is over there Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief. How we doing, gentlemen?
It's good to be back. Definitely got to get away every now and then and recharge the batteries a little bit, especially, with where we are at in the news cycle. But yeah, like you said, Logan, Florida State right in the middle of tour of duty and off-season conditioning and spring practice getting closer by the day. So it's going to be exciting to get a look at this revamped Seminole team.
It's nice to take a break and talk Florida State after writing about nothing but Luka Doncic for 12 days, it feels like.
Yeah, that was a wild ride. So we cover the Dallas Mavericks under the SI umbrella. And when that happened, which was practically around midnight for us on the East Coast, it was a very long night. And next, like Austin just mentioned, almost 2 weeks now of absolute insanity. Over 25,000 people on the website when that was all breaking. It was insanity. One of the craziest trades is going down in history and sports history of wildest trades and professional sports. So that was a lot of work for Austin to handle. But hey, Dustin, on the other side, you actually got to go see the Mavs in person, but all you care about is the Celtics anyways. So how was your trip up there in Boston?
Yeah, the trip was great. The game itself, not very fun. Since
is that the only game you went to?
That was the only home game that the Celtics had during the trip. And of course they get absolutely dominated by, a Maverick squad that had just traded Luka and was kind of reeling from that. And I mean, the guy that they traded for, Max Christie, comes in for his debut and just goes off. And you've got all these guys just going off for the Mavericks that don't normally do that. And I'm like, of course, the game when I come up here. And I don't know if Jeannie can hear me in here. I hope not, but she's now 1-5.
Dang. You're going to have to do some guy trips. You're going to have to invite me for a Boston trip the next
Whenever
time.
The games that I don't go with her, I'm 3-1.
Wow.
But dang. With her, 1-5.
So you're saying if you ever were to get free tickets, and you got 2 tickets and you're going to the finals.
Yeah, Gene and Dustin should have come to the finals last year.
Game 7, it's all on the line. Who you taking? I think you're going to have to go with Lopes.
Yeah, I don't think I can put that out there publicly just for my own safety in this household. But I definitely, I'd bring Gina for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the trip was awesome. It was really cold up there. It snowed a couple times, but I really enjoy it. And like I said, just getting to take a break for a little bit. But now back and ready to get after it.
Yeah, no, that's around this time of year. We need this break. I mean, it is nonstop. You get the spring, but then spring kind of just tags along going all the way into fall camp. And from there, it's just nonstop content going left and right. And like mentioned, we covered the NFL as well. So then you go all the way into Super Bowl mode with Radio Row, getting all kinds of content from that. It's just a nonstop thing. So having a little reset, little vacay, getting some time off from everything to reset the shockers helps us in a ton of ways. So but we're back now. And gentlemen, how did y'all watch the Super Bowl? What were y'all doing? Where were you? And y'all's thoughts on the Chiefs getting absolutely blown out. First off, did y'all see that coming at all?
No, I mean, I at least thought it would be a competitive game. And, personally, I thought the Chiefs would probably win just because that's kind of been the trend the last couple of years. And it always seems like they're that team that kind of pulls it out, just like the Patriots were back in the day. But, yeah, I mean, I caught a little bit of it while I was walking on the street, finished it up in the hotel room. And, I mean, honestly, by the time you got to that second half, you're like, man, when is this thing just going to be over? And I haven't really said that over the years for a lot of these Super Bowls, but that was just one of the most non-competitive games I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I don't know. Going into it, I don't know if there's a Super Bowl that I had cared less about in the last decade, maybe two. I couldn't have cared. I watched the game a little bit on my laptop to the side, but otherwise I was doing some other stuff, and the game got out of hand. Yeah, probably. And just very quickly, the game got out of hand, so it didn't really matter. And after halftime performance, I just turned it off.
I'll tell you why that game wasn't so close is because of a former Nole with Josh Sweat, man. What a performance by him. I mean, we saw flashes of that at FSU. He was always dealing with injury, which sucked. But, to have if you're going to have a breakout game, definitely when you're going to a contract year coming up for him in this offseason, why not just go off and be arguably top player there with Jalen Hurts for the Super Bowl MVP. He actually garnered a vote as well, but he had 2.5 sacks, 2 solo tackles, 6 total tackles, and all his career best performance with the Eagles. Johnny Wilson was also in the game and played. Sadly, had a drop, had just a little short pass coming from Jalen Hurts. It was dropped. But nonetheless, those two guys getting some Super Bowls is awesome. But I think everybody I was just seeing online, I think it was JJ Watt showing Josh Sweat some love. I think all across Twitter, a lot of athletes were like, holy smokes, who is this guy? Josh Sweat is about to get paid big time after that performance that he put on. And Patrick Mahomes, man, he was having to run for his life at times. And that defense for the Eagles just ate them up. I mean, they could barely get across that 50-yard line, gentlemen.
It was really impressive. And I think the craziest thing about it was Philadelphia wasn't really having to blitz a lot. I mean, it was just really that front four dismantling that Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And yeah, Josh Sweat really provided that spark there in the first half. And I think if Jalen Hurts finishes with a little bit less total yards, we might be talking about Josh Sweat as the Super Bowl MVP. But, for him, like you said, to have a career performance on that stage going into free agency, yeah, he earned himself some money. And I believe CBS Sports, they were talking about winners during the Super Bowl. They listed Josh Sweat's bank account as a winner after that game. So we'll see how it all plays out in a couple of weeks. And, the Eagles probably going to fight pretty hard to keep him. And we'll see what other teams enter the mix to try and sign him away.
I think the actual stat is they didn't blitz at all. On every passing down, they sent 4 players. And, in my opinion, the entire defensive line could have gotten Super Bowl MVP between him, Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis as well. I mean, all those guys were tearing Mahomes alive and that offensive line alive. Shout out Sweat for really putting on a performance on the biggest stage. I mean, that's what players dream of doing, and he absolutely did that. And like you said, he's about to get a fat paycheck this offseason.
Mm-hmm. Howie Roseman, I mean, shout out to him, the Eagles GM. This is something that they've been putting together for a lot of years, and they went over to the Georgia Bulldogs, grabbed a lot of those guys from the trenches in there. And when you have guys on the inside like Jalen Carter causing havoc, it only allows for you guys on the outside like Josh Sweat to excel. And Patrick Mahomes was just in turmoil over there. And sadly, it just wasn't a great game. I think everybody was all really, when there wasn't a game, it was all just looking forward to, I think, the halftime performance from Kendrick. Everybody was looking forward to that. And then afterward, though, you're like, dang, the season is over. Football is over. It kind of just felt a lot more lengthier because you had the college football playoff, and that extended so much longer than usual. And then you had the Super Bowl. So now we're going to head into the dead heat of the offseason. But like most of us do, if you enjoy football content, is the NFL Combine, and that's coming up in a few weeks. Yes, it's not as many Seminoles as there were last year, but it still will be fun to cover these guys because you're talking about Ryan Fitzgerald as being one of the top kickers coming into this draft, and then along with you're talking about Joshua Farmer at AZ. Yes, the season didn't go so well last year, but if you're looking at some of these projections, some of them are in the top 50 of players that are on these lists. So we'll have a good bit to talk about a little bit after this football season has officially ended overall for college and professional. I don't know if there might have been. I don't know who the bigger winner was though from the Super Bowl. Is it the Eagles or is it Jameis Winston? Because the amount of content that Fox put out with him was incredible. I mean, I think they won the whole week if you're looking at digital media, social media, driving engagement. And Jameis Winston, I think, blew up and is now over 1 million followers on Instagram. I mean, he was in the spotlight, going out there, asking questions to Andy Reid, going over there to Saquon Barkley, who Saquon Barkley told Jameis that he should sign with the New York Giants. And then also to Jameis speaking with Andy Reid as well, saying he'd love to play quarterback for him. He just absolutely won the week, man. It was awesome to see.
Yeah, he was all over the place, not only up there at the player interviews, but going around the city and interacting with fans, and you're seeing him out there eating beignets, and I mean, just really enjoying himself watching the game alongside comedian and FSU alum Bert Kreischer. And I mean, they had some pretty funny moments as well. At one point, with the way the game was, you got to get that broadcast on because that's more entertaining than what you're seeing on the field itself. But yeah, he absolutely killed it there in the spotlight. And man, Fox, they might be dialing up another Tom Brady contract for Jameis Winston.
Hey, you haven't even mentioned the two funniest moments of the week for me. The first one when he went to Sean Codd's yacht in the harbor and tried to get on was hysterical. I don't know where he pulled that captain's hat out from, but I died laughing as soon as it happened. And he's like, I got kids, man. They just want to come on and see what's going on. I was crying laughing at that. And then when he did the PE class at the elementary school, and it was very like Office or Abbott Elementary style editing, it was very funny. But yeah, he killed it all week. And by the game, he had no voice left, which I don't blame him because he was yelling and screaming and passing out W's all week. It was very, very funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just a different kind of person. A lot of us got to see that during his days in Tallahassee, just how he is off the field, how he treats people, the kind of conversations that you can have with him. You feel like you are a best friend to him, but now to get to see it, things have kind of transformed. I think they've done a good job of getting him out there, getting on these interviews, getting these podcasts in the last year, and definitely going into this new year, getting the opportunity with Fox. I mean, like you said, Dustin, he's going to get once football is done, and there's definitely still a goal in mind for him to get that Super Bowl. But when things are done, I think he's going to have a nice contract outside of it because there's a lot of media outlets that would love to have him on board because some of those numbers, like everything I was looking at, whatever Jameis was tweeting, I mean, we're talking 20, 25,000, 30, 40, 50,000 likes. That's insane. That is ridiculous numbers. We're talking Patrick Mahomes, like social media type numbers whenever he's tweeting something like that. Is a top 5 social media superstar in the NFL currently right now.
Yeah, you've got Jameis in his influencer era, and we saw the viral moments whenever he was in Tampa Bay and with New Orleans. But like you said, it seems like there's been a very big marketing push behind him over this past year, where you're seeing him on some of these popular talk shows and the podcast, and that's really led to him becoming even more mainstream than he was before. And I think you saw it not only during the Super Bowl, but also this past season when he was in Cleveland. I mean, he was a big highlight of a team that obviously, didn't perform very well during the regular season. And, Jameis Winston, wherever he goes, he always brings that energy and that bright spot. So it's going to be entertaining, like we were talking about with Josh Sweat, where Jameis Winston winds up in free agency in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he still hasn't gone on the biggest show yet, and that's right here. So still waiting, but we're not pushing. It's going to happen organically. When it happens organically, then we'll spend hopefully an hour or maybe 2 on here. And I've already got a list. I've always had a list going on my notepads on my phone of just things that I've wanted to ask that I think are important. And when that day comes, we'll have Jameis on here, and I think we'll have a really good conversation. Let's jump into a quick topic, still staying in the NFL realm here. Let's give our love and flowers to a former Here the Spear guest, and that's Jared Verse for winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now, I'm not going to say that I called this, but I did call it. I think I felt it. I don't know, Dustin, because you and I interviewed him. He was in the car. I went back and listened to that interview, and he was just a guy that you just saw that was going to change the locker room. Did I think that it would change completely to where, Florida State found that success and we're hoping to reach a college football playoffs? Maybe not, but the fact that he came into Tallahassee and made that change, and then also to what he was able to do in just his first year in the NFL, winning Defensive Rookie of the Year, it is extremely impressive. He was an absolute menace for Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams. And the future is extremely bright. And we were just talking about Jameis as a personality. Wait till get to learn and get to see Jared Verse more, because he's on that same realm of someone that is going to drive a lot of eyes to him. And he also garners a lot of respect. He talks a lot of trash, but also too, he backs it up. And, a lot of that Philly fan base got to see that in person whenever he was there. And yes, he was doing a lot of chirping, but on the field too, he was causing problems for the Eagles. But shout out to Jared Verse, man. Well earned, and super happy for him.
Yeah, I don't think it comes as any surprise. He's always had that confidence about him, and, he sets those goals and he goes out and achieves them. And it's just something he's done throughout his entire career. You think back to when he was in high school, an unranked recruit, begins his career at Albany, then obviously has that rise, comes to Florida State, and just continues that trajectory. About a year ago this time, he was up there dominating in Indy at the Combine alongside many of his former teammates. And, ever since he got to LA, it just feels like it's been a little bit different for Jared Verse. Like, yeah, he was doing that talk in Tallahassee, but man, I mean, he really made it look easier than you would think during his rookie season with the Rams. And, him and Braden Fisk was also a finalist for the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. It seems like they're going to be a tandem for the ongoing future in Los Angeles, and it's going to be exciting to watch.
And the two of them had a pretty good. I don't want to call it an advertisement, but that's pretty much what it was that the Rams put on social media, where they're competing with a whole bunch of little things, showcase their personalities a little bit. But that was pretty funny, but yeah, well deserved. And as great of a season as he had for a rookie, there are still so many things he can clean up on, because he got home a lot to the quarterback, but just didn't clean up the sack. And if he starts cleaning up on even half of those misses, you could be seeing 18, 20 sack seasons pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which, and then that will get you paid big time in the NFL. A lot of teams looking for edge rushers. The Bucks are in the want for one of those. And man, if they could add Jared Verse as well, but that's the factor that he brings to the table. When you have a guy out there, a guy that can get home when you need him in the fourth quarter on third down, that's just exactly what he did in Tallahassee. And I think the biggest factor, yes, you have what he has on the field and he brings those attributes to you, but the biggest thing is in the locker room and the way that he lifts the guys and the way that he brings leadership, but also backs what he's saying and talking about. And it's just going to be super fun to continue to cover him and his future career inside of the NFL. And two, Braden Fisk, got to give love to him. Past Here the Spear guest with us, gave us a great interview, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up with him in his off season. Let's talk about some 2024 season awards for Florida State. I did not think these were happening.
They had some to give out.
I didn't think it was possible. I thought maybe, all right, scratch those. Let's move on from this last season entirely. I wouldn't be against it, but there's some in here that are noteworthy, which I'll mention. Let's start off here with the offensive player with the most heart. This is a Crenshaw Award. Or I probably should mention, though, that there were awards not given this year: offensive most improved player, defensive most improved player, offensive scout team player of the year, along with the defensive side, special team scout player of the year, offensive MVP, and defensive MVP. I'm guessing that was going on the last for however long under Norvell, right, Dustin?
Yeah, I mean, at least, looking back to the ones that they put out a year ago, all of those were listed, and then they did not have them listed this year, which I'm guessing that's, because of the way the season went, obviously.
Makes sense to me.
Yep, DJ, you got snubbed from offensive MVP. Let's talk about the Crenshaw Award, which is the offensive player with the most heart. This goes to Lawrence Toafili. He had 109 rushes, 456 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The Monk Bonasort, shout out to him. Monk, man. I actually got to have a meeting with him when I was in high school. I was still trying to figure out what in the heck I was doing with this big social media following, covering Florida State. Didn't even have a website yet. Was just learning on. I wanted to be credentialed so badly and everything, but got to spend some time with Bonasort, and actually gave me some good advice to continue to try to work and strive to get that opportunity to be credentialed under Florida State football. But this award is named after him for the defensive player with the most heart, and this one goes to Kevin Knowles. VZ, Kevin Knowles.
As you can tell, I am speechless.
There you go. That's all I needed to hear right there.
I knew you would.
The Don Powell Award for Unsung Heroes. And this is perfect right here. This goes to Ryan Fitzgerald and Alex Mastromano. This is, as it should.
Makes sense.
Actually, what? Yeah, it does.
I said makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, these are, I know we're getting some comments here from our guy Stan. These are real awards. These are real awards that happen. Let's jump over to, go ahead.
Just to interject real quick, this happened during a banquet ceremony back in December, but FSU just released these with their end of season notes that came out around the end of January, I think a little bit after the national championship, somewhere around then.
Okay. All right, so then we got the Bill McRother Award, which is the top humanitarians. I just completely might have said that wrong. Humanitarians. This actually went to a couple of players. Yeah, went to a couple of players. Justin Cryer, Fentrell Cypress, Jackson West, Andre Otto, Maurice Smith, Darius Washington as well. For Defensive Freshman of the Year, this went to Edwin Joseph, KJ Kirkland, and those two right there.
They had Landon Thomas listed in there as well.
Yeah, I was okay. I thought
it's right.
That wrong in there. I was like, wait a second. Landon Thomas is noted in there for Defensive Player of the Year.
It's right. It kind of confused me as well, but I guess they just made an amendment so that he's a Freshman of the Year, and that maybe didn't go with it just solely as Defensive Freshman of the Year this time. I don't know.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I was like, wait a second, what just happened on here? And then there's Offensive Newcomers of the Year. This was wide receiver Malik Benson, who just most recently transferred over to Oregon. Yeah. Any objections there on that award that was given?
I mean, I can't name 3 plays that he made, but sure.
Who would have been your Offensive Newcomer of the Year?
Can I count Richie Leonard for 2 games? Does that count?
Well, there was an offensive lineman included.
Or Amari Williams, or I don't know about Benson, man. I think he could be a good player. It's just,
I think there's probably behind the scenes leadership stuff that he was helping with. I'm sure that played a role in it. But Jacob Rizzi also got an Offensive Newcomer of the Year award. Here we go. Some of this is new to me. I did not look through the whole list of this, but here we go. VZ. Defensive Newcomer of the Year.
Oh, no.
Defensive end Marvin Jones Jr. Shade Tree Jr. VZ.
Wow.
And Sione Lolohea also too gets Defensive Newcomer of the Year.
I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah. I mean, I know this is where it was. We're not there anymore. We're out of that. We're in 2025. But
maybe they gave him the award to try and stop him from transferring to Oklahoma.
Or was it like they gave it to him going, our team was so bad that you were still somehow our newcomer of the year?
I don't know.
He was disappeared for 10 games. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And then here we go. Special teams newcomers of the year: Mason Arnold, Earl Little Jr., and Samuel Singleton. Shout out to him for his 95-yard kickoff return against Duke. We all remember that, showing off his speed. And then the Bobby Bowden Leadership Award went to a handful of players here, including Jeremiah Byers, Joshua Farmer, Daryl Jackson, Maurice Smith, and Azare Thomas. Leadership awards, they're a little interesting to me, but
I'm surprised they gave one out, I'm gonna be honest.
I can see Jeremiah Byers. He's a guy that's loud and is always hyping up in pre-games, and then when you get on the field, it's a little bit of a different kind of story. I can see AZ in there, definitely Maurice Smith, and kind of kept that whole O-line together at times for as much as whatever that was, but just off the field and
together
practice.
There's nothing about that offensive line that was together. Not a single part about that was together.
I'm talking about more of like eating lunch together and having dinners and stuff.
They were friends. They were friends though.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, not
friends on a way to a 2-win season. Great job, guys. Glad you guys are friends.
Daryl Jackson, Joshua Farmer's also listed as leaders there. VZ, any comment on that?
Nope. Someone's already going to get mad at me. Enough. I'm good.
Yeah, you're going to halt down on the comments
for now.
On the criticism. Yeah. Well, Daryl Jackson, we heard from a lot of newcomers in these interviews as of the last couple of weeks. They've been noting on Daryl Jackson as being someone that has been very helpful with them and being a leader in the room for everybody across the team. So we'll see if Daryl Jackson, I think Daryl Jackson's got to take that a big leap in that regard. And I think Farmer too, as well. He's going into the league, but there was just big question marks for me anyways about those two going into the 2024 season. And sure enough, we kind of found out how that team was going to perform. But there's your 2024 2-10 season awards, gentlemen. And I hope that's the last time we're speaking about.
Should we do our own 2024 awards where it's the exact opposite?
We probably won't have any interviews ever again on this show. So, like I said, I think everybody, including the team, coaching staff, us over here, we've got to move on from 2024, and we're heading into a new direction. NFL Combine's coming up. It was announced that Joshua Farmer, AZ, and also to Ryan Fitzgerald will be representing the Florida State Seminoles up there in Indy. I checked the weather yesterday. I did not know that it was going to be 5, 6, 10, 15 degrees up there. I had no clue.
Indianapolis in late February, early March. I mean, really that entire Midwest area. It's rough times. I'm going to Detroit in April, and I'm terrified.
Yeah, I've got family that's about an hour from Indianapolis, so I'm well aware how cold it can get there.
Golly, yeah. Now that's going to be. I will be staying indoors for majority of that, but looking forward though to seeing these guys out there. I mean, I plan on asking some questions from talking about what happened a little bit into last year, but also to their plans on moving forward into the league, kind of seeing their thoughts on the staff changes that happened at Florida State, for Farmer, talking maybe if he knows anything about Terrence Knight, also too talking about Odell Hagen's moving into a new role. And then, AZ talking about Coach Surtain and how much that is his help in coaching has helped him excel and get to this spot now where he's going to be drafted. I mean, there was one of the latest mocks though coming from the NFL Network had AZ getting picked up from the Kansas City Chiefs at number 31. So I think, of course, the season last year definitely, distracted us from, yes, there is some talent on this team. But I think whenever we see these guys at the combine and how they perform will be big for them because, I think a lot of people, at least, I don't know how it works for scouts as much, but just people that are watching the games and analysts and such definitely forgot that Florida State probably played football games after the month of October.
I will say Joshua Farmer is getting a lot of love too. Daniel Jeremiah for the NFL Network, who's probably about as good as anybody is in the scouting business, has Joshua Farmer as the 39th overall prospect on his first big board, and AZ Thomas as 43rd, I think it was. So these guys are getting a little bit of love. I would personally think AZ's more likely to go higher than Farmer, just because of how loaded of a defensive tackle class as it is, and corners a little bit weaker once you get past those top 2 or 3 options. And AZ's got the size, length, speed, everything you want from a corner. And he should rise up boards, especially if he puts on this show we expect him to at the combine.
Yeah, and I mean, he's, been getting a lot of first-round buzz, not only to the Kansas City Chiefs, but I saw one to the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, we're talking about multiple mock drafts from different services. So it seems like he did a good job to continue raising his stock with that performance at the Reese Senior Bowl. And obviously Joshua Farmer, Ryan Fitzgerald participated in that pre-draft event as well. Farmer getting some buzz himself. So, yeah, I think if Thomas and Farmer can both perform well at this combine, I mean, they're going to put themselves in a position to be drafted, in that top 50 range at the very least.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think for AZ, you just see what he brings. His physical attributes and his measurements are going to play a big part in getting some eyes on him. But like you said, Daniel Jeremiah, some of these bigger guys that make these mock drafts, these big names, they like what they see in the talent from those two guys. And, I think Fitzgerald, the season that he had, it's always different with kickers and such, very rare that you'll see where a team is going after a kicker. But I think he's going to have a really good opportunity if it is in the draft or whenever you see some signings right after the draft. Fitzgerald will be one of those guys, just in the way that how consistent he was last year, and also to the leg that he showed too as well for FSU. I wish they would have showed a little bit more of it. I wish Norvell would have allowed him to use his leg a little bit more, just put some points on the board, which would have been nice. But still, nonetheless, though, looking forward to seeing those 3 guys up there in a few weeks. Just some notes here real quick. It became official that Adam Fuller has been hired to the LA Chargers as their safeties coach. And then also real quick, Alex Atkins has found a new gig, and he's headed to the LSU Tigers to go join Brian Kelly. Also Pat Payton and Dustin Hill. He's going to be LSU's new tight ends coach and run game coordinator. Any thoughts on these 2 moves here from these former coordinators?
Yeah, that Atkins one, that one is very interesting, because we think back to the early signing period where Florida State obviously saw 5-star offensive lineman Solomon Thomas flip to LSU. And, in the aftermath of that decision, he was asked why he did it. And he said that he had spoken to Atkins, and Atkins had, basically told him about LSU's offensive line coach and that, he could coach him at the next level. And then now a couple of months later, Alex Atkins joining up with LSU, and now will be around Solomon Thomas as he begins his college career. So that one's a little bit interesting to me. And then as far as Fuller making the leap to the NFL, I think that makes a lot of sense for him. I think his message will convey a little bit easier to guys at the professional level rather than, younger 18 to 22-year-olds, high school recruits and such. And we'll see how it works out. He's going to have a couple of former Seminoles under his command in Derwin James and Asante Samuel Jr.
Well, I think Asante's a free agent this summer,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
But I mean, he still has Derwin James, who's a top whatever safety in the NFL, 3 or 4, whatever you want to put it as.
Had a great
honestly,
season last year.
He did. Honestly, a good landing spot for Fuller. It's been 2 months, 2.5 months, almost 3 months, really, since those guys were dismissed, and for him to land in the NFL after all this time, I think's a good fit, especially under Harbaugh. Who's one of the better coaches in the NFL. I think that's a good fit. But yeah, the Atkins one is interesting. Definitely some cahoots going on there, and we'll leave it at that.
And he's also not an offensive line coach anymore. He's a tight ends coach. So,
yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting. So best of luck to those gentlemen. But Florida State, on their side of things, it was official. They have made a hire as Florida State lost Carter Barfield going to Tulsa to be their special teams coordinator over there. But now Florida State makes a move to bring in Jonathan Rutledge. He comes in to what I think is going to be a very busy spring for the Seminoles on the special teams side of things. As we were just talking about Ryan Fitzgerald there, Alex Mastromano moving on too. And interested to see what Mastromano does as well. I'm shocked that maybe he was invited or not, but going to the NFL Combine. But I mean, the Seminoles have. What was the deal with that?
I was looking at the Combine list. I didn't see any punters invited.
Oh, interesting. It wouldn't be a thing where it's like kickers in total, and you keep them there, and there's punters and kickers.
I don't know. It just listed out the kickers and no punters.
Pat McAfee, what are we doing, man? You got to fix that stuff. Got to fix your Maybe they can't kick in that stadium.
I don't know.
Anyways,
I'm trying to think of the last time I even saw a punter at the Combine. I feel like it's been a few years.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, those two guys, Ryan Fitzgerald and Alex Mastromano, moving on to the next level. Now with Rutledge coming in, he's got a lot of work here to do, and developing and getting these guys ready on the special teams side and the kicking department. He spent 4 years at Catholic University. In 2023, he was the offensive coordinator. In 2020 to 2022, though, he was a special teams coordinator and wide receivers coach. He also helped too as a recruiting coordinator at Catholic University, which is a D3 school.
Yeah, I think normally, when you see a guy coming over from a D3 program, you're like, well, is Florida State making the right acquisition here? And, I would just point to his experience that he's gained throughout his career. Has made stops in the ACC with North Carolina, was in the SEC at Auburn and Missouri. And then before that stint at the D3 level, he was the senior special teams analyst at Nebraska. So, he's picked up some very good experience throughout his career. And like you said, Logan, Florida State obviously lost a quality staff member in Carter Barfield, who got that on-field job promotion as the special teams coordinator at Tulsa. And, they're going to need a guy like Rutledge to come in and replace that position. Working alongside JP. And obviously, we all know Mike Norvell prides Florida State on its success on these special teams units. And they've got a big task ahead of them. Jake Weinberg probably sliding in there as the new starting kicker. I think the starting punter job going to be a little bit more open. Mac Chiuminto, a guy who's been here for a couple years and has some experience. You do have Samuel Singleton coming back as a kick returner. But you're going to need a guy alongside him. And, it sounds like Squirrel White probably has the early edge of that punt return position, but there's going to be a competition there as well. So Florida State, they got a lot of work to do, especially with these guys that are moving on following the 2024 season.
I'm going to fact check you real quick, though, because there's nothing I love more than proving Dustin wrong. There is 2 punters at the Combine this year. Florida's Jeremy Crawshaw and Alabama's James Burnett.
I missed him in my scroll.
You did.
Unbelievable.
It's a shame. But we know Norvell places a heavy emphasis on special teams. That's nothing new. If he thinks this is a good fit, then who am I to say different?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, people are here listening to the show to get our analysis on the special teams. So this is why we're here. But yeah, if anybody's wondering if they're like fact checkers or arguing about anything I've seen in person between Austin and Dustin, I just let them go. Let them go at it. If you're in an Airbnb for a week, on a game week, you just let them go. Let them go at it. You just grab another beer out of the fridge and you just listen to see what they're going to argue about. If the grass is green or the sky's blue, someone will have a different answer, I promise you.
Shout out to those 2 punters.
Shout out. Even if one went to Florida, he may not be the brightest, but, he's at the Combine.
Yeah. Let's comment real quick, too, on some news here that happened. Like some of this we're trying to catch up on because we were not live last week, so some things are a little old here. But still, it's worth mentioning. Could Florida State bring back a linebacker and DJ Lundy, who is reportedly vying for his sixth year of eligibility from the NCAA per warchant.com. What do we think? DJ Lundy.
No.
Could he come back in Tony White's defense?
No.
John Papuchas's linebacker room now. No longer Randy Shannon's VZ.
No. I don't care.
DJ Lundy,
it's time. It's time.
6th year. What?
It's
You
time.
don't think so? You don't think?
And I don't know how realistic it is. He played in 5 games last year. Dustin might know more than me on the likelihood of that, but it's time. Go get a job. Come on.
Whoa.
I don't know. I mean, we're in that strange era of college football where, you know, it feels like waivers are being given out for just about anything. So even though, you know, he might have exhausted his options technically, you apply for that waiver anyway, you might very well get it. Now, I will say, I think if Lundy is approved by the NCAA to play another year, I don't think it's going to be at Florida State. You know, FSU's obviously made a lot of changes in that linebacker room, not only with the coaching staff above it, but also the guys in there, you know, adding in 2 very experienced linebackers and then bringing in Caleb Lavallee from North Carolina, a younger prospect. And they're able to get Omar Graham Jr. out of the portal. And obviously, you know, Justin Cryer, Blake Nicholson, some other guys that are rising in that room. So I just don't know if they'd have enough space for Lundy to come back, or even if that would be the best fit for both parties at this point. Because, you know, as we know, following the 2023 season, Lundy was committed to transfer to Colorado, ultimately came back to Florida State, and he was banged up for much of last season, missed a lot of time during fall camp, even though he was able to get out there for that season opener against Georgia Tech. And, I mean, just wasn't fully healthy at any point during that 2024 campaign. So it just seems that it might be that time for these parties to split if he does get the chance to come back to college.
Yeah, I don't know how realistic that is, because he played in 7 games as a freshman, so you can't retroactively give him a red shirt. He played in 5 games last year, so you can't give him a medical red shirt. He already used the 5th year for the COVID year. I just don't know how realistic it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I would rather go and see what you can develop in that room, younger guys as well. And it's going to be a very important spring for them too, getting accustomed to this new defense that Tony White's going to be bringing, and really excited to see him being very hands-on in this unit with his past experience coaching the linebackers. But going to DJ Lundy, I think it's, you know, time. You had the time, and you know, it's time to move on and give some of these younger guys, you know, a bigger shot. And I think Tony White, you know, this is his defense, and at the end of the day, it's going to be what he feels like is best anyways, but still he's got to go get the waiver anyways, speaking about DJ Lundy. So yeah, that's my take on it. But like you said, Dustin, I feel like there's tons of waivers now where guys can stick around in college football for so long. It is insane. It's absolutely insane.
It's wild. But, you know, I will credit DJ Lundy, you know, even after that injury and he ended up being ruled out for the season, he did stick around the team for the remainder of the year, was out there at practices, was supporting his teammates through games, you know, during obviously a lost season and at a time where he didn't have to stay around because, you know, we all thought that he'd be moving on from following the season. But, you know, he did anyway. So got to credit him for that. And, you know, we'll see what happens in this process for him.
Yep. Well, gentlemen, we're only really getting close, practically to a month away from spring camp, and man, it's going to look a whole lot different. And I think we're all excited for that. I think we're all looking forward to seeing what this staff puts together. You got a lot of newcomers, both on the football field as players, but also too in the coaching staff. And I think everyone is ready to see some changes. You know, Dustin, when you get out there to camp, I think you want to see some different drills and the same thing that's been going on every single practice. It's time to switch some things up. I'm honestly down for a little bit more physicality. In my opinion, that this team needed to play with better physicality, but when you went to practices, just didn't seem too right at times. And I think with these new 2 coordinators coming in, you're going to see a whole different kind of landscape and how these drills, the ways that they're moving around. You know, one thing about Mike Norvell, he is going to bring the energy in, and you know, things about his direction is very clear and is strict in those practices, but you could definitely tell that things went stale last year, and the message that he was bringing to the team, it just completely went flat on them. But with that, going into this new season, things have to change, and including that needs to be a different way that they are implementing their camps and their practices and how things are ran. And with these newcomers coming in, just listening to a few of these interviews, like Deuce Robinson, you're getting a good feel of what they're bringing in, what the locker room. And the biggest one that you brought in, at least transfer wise, was Thomas Castellanos. Deuce Robinson spent some time talking about how big of a factor it was for him to come to Florida State was because of Thomas Castellanos, not just only as a player, but also and the leadership that he brought. He said, Tommy is incredible. He's one of the reasons why I came here. He's been great. You can tell when you talk to someone, you can just tell you're going to be lifelong friends. It's really like a brotherhood. And, just from Deuce Robinson, but also to a handful of other newcomers as well, have been giving a lot of love to Thomas Castellanos for that. He's been very hands-on ever since, the move-ins happened. He was there helping them. Deuce said that he lives right across from Castellanos. That door is always unlocked. Those two guys are always hanging out or going and getting some field work. And, I think that's something that is, of course, huge under Mike Norvell, and what he wants to bring into a locker room is bringing that chemistry back. And I'm sure that was lost when you go 2-10 last year. That's going to be lost no matter what. A lot of that, accountability felt like that got thrown out the window when you lost a lot of those previous leaders that are now excelling in the league. Mike Norvell has to find those leaders, and he's got to do a better job of reading the room, which he did a very bad job of last year, and finding and fixing those holes.
Yeah, I think it all starts at the top for Florida State. Your team is going to take on the personality of your head coach and your quarterback. And, obviously Norvell's job is going to be shifting a lot in 2025 with him giving over the offensive play call duties to Gus Malzahn. And now I'm interested to see, during practice, with Mike Norvell's focus not totally on the offense, what is going to be his approach? How is he going to be bouncing around between the two units? That's going to be something to watch. And then also, how Gus and Tony White implement their own new systems coming in to Florida State. But like you said, Logan, I think it all starts with leadership, and the early signs have been very positive since Thomas Castellanos arrived at Florida State, and we heard from him in his introductory interview. And like you also mentioned, multiple other transfers and some of the high school guys mentioning him by name as taking on the leadership role at Florida State. And that's what you want to see, because it didn't necessarily happen outwardly from DJU a season ago. You want a guy to come in, grab it by the reins, be vocal with it, and, begin to command this team. And on the offensive side of the ball, you're seeing that from Thomas Castellanos. On the defensive side of the ball, it seems like Daryl Jackson is starting to take that promising step into a leadership role. We'll see if he can continue to run with it. But this spring, it's going to be important for Florida State to begin establishing these habits and that strong foundation in the locker room and with the culture that isn't going to let them go through what they just went through again.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to add. Definitely curious to see who steps up as leaders on the field. Obviously, we're hearing a lot of these stuff with Castellanos and D Jackson and everybody else, but you got to see it on the field as well, how these guys are interacting in and out of practices, in and out of the locker room. That's going to be very important. I think I'm most curious to see what this defense looks like. Is Tony White going to stick to that 3-3-5? Is it going to be very versatile front where he's mixing 4-man fronts and even some 5-man fronts here and there? I'm curious to see how that turns out. And maybe spring practice, they kind of keep it vanilla, but I'm really excited to see what this defense looks like, because there's absolutely talent on that side of the ball if they can find a way to unlock it.
And I think the biggest thing for me is just dialing into the trenches, because obviously last year going into the season, we talked about how experienced Florida State's offensive line is, and these guys have all been around each other for years. So, of course, this thing should take off on the field, and it obviously did not. And now Florida State, they've gone to the transfer portal, added in 4 new faces who have a lot of experience in their careers, brought in 4 new bodies from the high school level. Obviously, a new position coach in Herb Hand. This is going to be a huge couple of weeks for these guys to begin meshing and see what it looks like, when they're all together on the field as a unit rather than just 4 individuals coming into Florida State. So that's going to be huge to start developing some chemistry. Obviously, Castellanos being behind them and starting to see what this new offense looks like. And then on the flip side, on the defensive side of the ball, how are things going to change for that front with Terrence Knight running things rather than Odell and JP?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and 2, I'm looking at, we were just talking about Adam Fuller. he's off. And, he was coaching the safeties, of course, was also your defensive coordinator. But, Tony White's coming in. Now you got Evan Cooper coaching the safeties. You got Surtain coaching the corners. So I'm interested to see how that works because there is some strong talent there. I mean, look at Shaheem Brown, Conrad Hussey. You know what kind of talent they have. You know that. But it just needs to be developed, or it needs to be coached better, or it needs to be put in a better scheme, whatever that takes. But that there's talented individuals there. And two, there are some younger guys as well that you feel very excited about, that you saw flashes as well in. But yeah, I agree with you, Dustin. I mean, I'm going into this camp looking at this offensive line and the best that they can do to get the run game going. They've got to get the run game fixed. That was a massive letdown for them this last season. And I'm also it's going to be very fun because what we might think who should be the starters, or we could all sit here and project starters, but we got to understand there's a whole new staff, and these guys might like this guy better here, or this guy might fit this position better over here. I mean, that's the best part about spring, but also too, when you have a new coaching staff coming in, there is going to be some guys that I think are going to be some surprises of, whoa, didn't expect him to be over here, or dang, okay, now he's being moved over to this side of the ball. Like, that's the thing that is going to be something that we'll be keeping a close eye on. But I mean, the offensive line is a number one priority going into this, outside of what you see in Thomas Castellanos and what Gus Malzahn is able to build with him going into this 2025 season. Got to get the offensive line and build that chemistry early. And, I think everybody, is worrisome a little bit about, health and, not having any injuries. And, you don't want to, get a season ending injury and camp, and definitely in the spring. But I need some physicality. I need something. I need something different than what we've seen in the years past. And I think we're going to go and get some of that, just going off of some of these interviews and some talks with these coaches coming in. But, I got to be honest, and I think I speak for a lot of this fan base, is, it's hard to find a lot of excitement if you're a fan. Us, we cover the team. We're going to be there. We're going to be at these practices and such, and covering and getting these interviews. So we get to be there, and that's exciting. But for fans outside looking in, you see the Doak renovations happening. You're seeing all of that, and they're asking for money and all this kind of stuff on the booster side. And you see the football-only facility being built. There was so much excitement going into it. But when you go 2-10, there's a lot of really asking for more money, asking for this, or you need me to go do that and do more after you just had the season that you had, or you're here in Norvell, talk to the boosters about, how this is going to change and everything. It's not a lot of things are going to be answered until Florida State faces off against Alabama and that season opener and Doak Campbell, and a renovated Doak Campbell Stadium. And I feel the pain of fans right now, where they're not finding a lot of thrill and maybe this upcoming season. And maybe that will come. Right now we just ended this football season. It was a very long one. And, usually around that late summertime, you start smelling that football grass, and maybe I'll feel a little bit different. But, just the fact of what we saw last year in Norvell, and then at, some of those interviews and post-game pressers, it just did not feel like the same coach that you had the 4 years prior to that. And that scared me, man, still does scare me a little bit. And, not saying spring will answer all of the questions that I have in my head, nor will it do the same for a lot of FSU fans, but it ain't going to matter until we see Florida State face off in Alabama and there's been 1 or 2 quarters played. Speaking of wildness and all like stuff going on, is basketball, FSU basketball. What a roller coaster ride I feel like it's been. They've lost 3 of their last 5 games, but came away with a win against Wake Forest last night, 72-70. Their last win before that was against Notre Dame, VZ. But I think the biggest topic right now is about, the future of FSU basketball and what they're going to do in the head coaching department, VZ.
Yeah, I'd rather start on the court. That's just me personally. Just coming off that 4-game losing streak where you're losing to Cal, Stanford, Virginia Tech at home, and then that embarrassing, shocking loss at Boston College where they just fell apart in the final minute. News gets announced that Coach Hamilton's going to resign after the season. Then the next day they play Notre Dame. get a much needed win at home, then a week off, and then this huge win at Wake Forest up here in North Carolina last night. I was at that game. It was electric. It's the first win I've seen on the road for the team in, I think, 2 years. So it's been a little bit for me. I was glad to get back in the win column. I'm no longer cursed. Yes. But they're down 16 points with 8 minutes and 22 seconds left. They start making a little bit of run over the next few minutes. Then Jameer Watkins fouls out with about 5 minutes to go. You're like, there's no chance. Then they outscore Wake Forest 18-7 over that final 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Wake Forest lost track of Justin Thomas a few times in the corner, who knocked down a few threes. Taylor Bowen obviously hit that massive shot with about 17 seconds left from three to take the lead. It was an electric game. It was good for them to play with some heart. And that was one of the things I was curious about was with this announcement of Coach Hamilton resigning after the season, are they going to show a little extra fight? Are they going to play with more fire than they'd been playing with the last few weeks? And so far, that's mostly been the case. They were flat a little bit in the middle 20, 25 minutes of last night's game. But for the most part, they're really wanting to send Leonard Hamilton off in the way he deserves, because he's one of the most revered coaches in college basketball. So it was good to see them come away with that win. They've got a tough schedule the rest of the season, going to Louisville, going to Duke. You've got Clemson coming to Tallahassee on Saturday. It's not going to be easy, but maybe they can steal a couple games here and there and send Hamilton off with some wins. But speaking on what's going to look like next, it seems like the two candidates that are getting the most buzz, which is what I fully expected, is Luke Laux, former Florida State point guard in their first ACC championship team in 2012. He's now an assistant coach with the Sacramento Kings. And Sam Cassell, the leader of those early 90s teams that had a lot of success. He's been an NBA assistant for almost 20 years now, since he hung up the laces after winning a championship with the Celtics as a player, won a championship with the Celtics last year as an assistant coach. He's gotten NBA head coaching jobs for what feels like 8 years in a row, and for one reason or another just hasn't landed it. I expected those two to be the big buzzy names. I have said it on record many times. I am not a fan of hiring NBA coaches because it just hasn't worked. If you look at Mike Woodson at Indiana, he's lasted 3 years and it will be out the door after this year. Juwan Howard didn't last long at Michigan. Kenny Payne was horrific at Louisville. It's just time and time again, these haven't worked. And it's not to say that it can't work, but it hasn't. And until some things get figured out about NIL and the transfer portal and all these other things, it's going to be really hard for an NBA coach that has zero coaching experience to come to college and try to figure this all out on the fly. Laux, I think, has a better chance of picking that up just because of how young he is. I mean, I forget how old he is off the top of my head. He's maybe 33, 34. Cassell's in his 50s at this point. I don't know how likely it is that he could pick that up. Laux maybe could, given some of his experience, coaching in the summer league, coaching the G League, developing these players off the floor. He was with those Warriors teams with Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and all those guys when they were winning championships. But again, I'm very anti hire an NBA coach. Get some guys that have some college experience on that coaching staff.
There are obviously some reports, by you and also some other national media that Florida State and Laux, might have some mutual interest in him being the one to replace Leonard Hamilton. Whereas today, there are actually some comments that came out from Sam Cassell, and he publicly said that Florida State has not contacted him yet. And the athletic director, he's talking about Michael Alford, has not reached out to him about the position to this point.
Yeah, I still expect there to be interest on both sides with both Laux and Cassell. And, why wouldn't they? They have a lot of love for Florida State. I mean, Sam Cassell's been at a lot of games when, Florida State's playing at Boston College. I've mentioned this a few times on this podcast where I ran into him in Las Vegas for the Summer League in 2019. I was wearing an FSU Polo League, just walks right by me, pats me on the chest and goes, "Nice shirt," and keeps walking. I'm like, oh my God, that was Sam Cassell. But he's just always had a lot of love for Florida State. His name is in the rafters. And, I think the casual fan would love to see Sam Cassell come back. I just don't know how well that would work.
Yeah, isn't that crazy now? You would go back like 3 or 4 years ago before the NIL game. And
I would love
that.
it.
Would be,
I love it.
Get them in now.
Yeah, it's just an entirely different game right now.
It's a lot to handle, man. It is a lot. And now whenever you come in and get these interviews to be head coaches at the collegiate level, it's not only just about what you do on the field or the court that you do well in, but also, too, how can you excel and what might be the most important part of being a head coach at the collegiate level is now working the NIL transfer portal, and the staff that you build on the back end to be able to deal with all that. So what a crazy world we live in. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Not a whole ton of crazy stuff happening this week. We'll start jumping into some of our spring camp previews that we do every year, where we dial into every single position group and give you the rundown there. Got a lot of players that I'm looking forward to talking about, just like we were mentioning, is going to look a whole lot different going into this spring and next month. So we'll have full coverage of spring camp coming for you guys here on this show, and anything related to the NFL draft, all different kinds of conversations and discussion topics we will be jumping into next week here on the show. As always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you get notified every time we release a new episode. But until then, we will see you in the next Hear the Spear episode, and have a great rest of y'all's weekend. Peace.